my talk. Here we go. He said he living life as a gringo, where you question where you fit in every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course, and man, I've been just reflecting, and I've been working through some limiting beliefs, and I wanted to share a conversation that I personally revisited that has kind of been, I guess, helping me work through it a bit. But it's really funny. It's really funny how our limiting beliefs and our childhood trauma fucking stick with us, you know? And I've been kind of sharing, the ups and downs of the last couple of years or so, or this year, and me sort of trying to figure out hey, what do you want next, type of thing, and also feeling like simultaneously, doors are being slammed in my face, or there just are no doors in general, with certain projects, right? And last week, I want to say it was last week, I started sending out a couple emails on some ideas, and I got a lukewarm response from a person and a brand that I've been trying to work with pretty much since I started DJing, at least since I got into radio. This was my dream management and booking agency to work with. I'm pretty sure I had reached out to them at one point and never got a response, and all of a sudden, I had gotten a response recently. And we kind of had just been going back and forth, what I had been up to and these different things. And, I've talked about this on the pod, but for me, for a while, DJing kind of just took a back seat and produced, music production and those kinds of things. And I was very upfront about that with this person. And we kind of arrived at a place of listen, I think keep building up what you're doing. This is what they said to me. Let's stay in contact, but keep getting back to basically where you were before, almost, right? And let's revisit this conversation. And I was definitely amped up about it, even though it's not what you want to hear. I think at this point I'm kind of used to that's sort of the nature of this industry. Is opportunities, generally speaking, they always come with sort of a wait and see type of thing. It's not like traditional job opening and you're kind of hey, okay, you're hired, or sorry, we went in another direction. It's always kind of hey, can you jump through this hoop and then this one and then prove it to us you can do this and that? And that's sort of always the case, So I wasn't shocked by that. Of course, you're disappointed. You'd love for it to work out a bit easier. But either way, I was excited by the fact that I was getting this quick of a response and this much of an interest. It sort of reinvigorated me a bit, and also was a reminder of yeah, you're just about there, right? And a couple little tweaks, you're getting to the place that you want to be, and the fact that serious contenders are considering you, as somebody worthy of working with them. We're not far off from the goal, basically, right? And so that was a great reminder. And ironically, I tell my parents about this, and my mom is excited for me and sort of just reiterating how they believe in me being able to make this opportunity happen. And I got kind of choked up and emotional about it. It was beautiful. A beautiful moment. But the fucked up thing about it was they seemed to believe in me more than I believed in myself. Because I started, I that day I was amped up. I was fucking around and working on some stuff. But, the next day and the next day and next day, all these like negative thoughts began to sort of creep in my mind about me not being good enough, about me not being talented enough to pull this off, to do some of the things that are being asked of me, right? And I, as you're gonna do, you hit a couple roadblocks in sort of trying to reignite past relationships that I had over the years as far as DJing goes, researching people and trying to get into certain things, sending out emails and not getting some responses, right? And all those things began to like twist the knife a bit of self-doubt, right? Of like, you're not good enough to operate at this high of a level, and you're just going to be disappointed again. And I'm not going to lie, like as much as I've been pushing past it, it's kind of made me spiral a little bit. So what I did was I kind of just started revisiting old conversations. And this is why I love like keeping a journal. For me, I've been lucky enough that I have a fucking, 3 seasons of a podcast. I have recordings from mastermind groups and all these things. And I can revisit different points in time where maybe I had a healthier mindset. And I was revisiting an old conversation from the Just Be Social Club. And for those not familiar, that was a mastermind group I had been hosting. But I was revisiting an old conversation from that. And a lot of it was centered around the idea of limiting beliefs. And also listening to myself sort of talking to the group about certain things I was going through at the time and the things that they were triggering, and sort of reinventing yourself. And I always talk about this idea of like you 2.0, right? And it's this idea of, it's this idea of like deciding who you're going to be and begin living as that person. And I felt like I'm listening to this conversation I was having. I'm listening to myself speak, and it was a great reminder of like where I was sort of at that point and what I did to sort of get my head back on straight. And I began to feel, I should say, a bit of comfort in hearing that conversation. So it's one I wanted to kind of share. And especially as we get to the end of the year here, where maybe, I know the holidays are stressful and there's a lot going on, but I think also with days off from work and extended weekends and things of that nature, we also have a little bit of time to reflect, to plan ahead. I think the end of something and the start of something as far as like a year goes is always just feels like a great moment. And with all that in mind, I've been talking way longer than I wanted to, but I wanted to share this conversation because it kind of gave me a little bit of relief, but also just gave me a bit of perspective of, where these ideas come from that when we don't believe in ourselves, and literally how we hold ourselves back. Right? Like I'm sitting here on this email with somebody who is a very well-established big time player in the industry. We're talking about like, major league level representation as far as for what I do. And they're telling me that they potentially want to work with me. They see me in that light. And even though they're saying it, I can't seem to bring myself to see myself in the same light. And I hate being redundant there, but again, it's just the power of the mind is so fucked, man. In many ways, it's beautiful and fucked at the same time. So I kind of, again, was listening to this Just Be conversation and hearing myself talk and the reflections of some of the other group members and sort of just reminding myself how much of this is all in our head, and we have the ability to push past it and try and establish guardrails and reinvent ourselves and, program our mind to be the person that we want to be. So I wanted to share this conversation. Hopefully it'll help somebody out there. Like it kind of helped me as I revisited it. So we'll have this conversation from the Just Be Social Club as a part of our Mi Gente segment. Mi Gente. I'm having a realization. It's almost like the veil has been lifted from my eyes for whatever reason as of late. And I'm realizing how I gave into limiting beliefs so much over the course of probably the last 2 years or so. And I've kind of been in my bubble and I've been working hard and doing all the things, but it's almost like as I was doing it, I didn't completely believe that I could make all of those things come true. And I'm not sure if any of you guys can relate to that. Obviously we talk about manifestation, all of these different things, but like the idea of manifestation when you're really getting to a place of like being able to make shit happen is when you genuinely believe it as if it's happening right now, and you genuinely believe you're that person that you're striving to be, and believing that you can get there. And I think for me, even in setting my goals, I was thinking really small, where I was almost giving myself an out. I was sort of giving into um I don't know, the part of me that is still that like kid in his parents' basement, not sure of himself, right? That still exists. And that's somebody that I've been kind of working on, grew up having that kid grow up a little bit and reflecting on that. And, even and I'll share something with you guys just because, we were a group that's been getting together for a minute. But I had when I left the Breakfast Club, it was like I had the world at my fingertips at that point. I was getting ready to launch my first podcast, and I was one of the first ones that they were launching. So all the attention was kind of on me, and it was exciting for everybody. And literally, like the same week that I announced that I was leaving the Breakfast Club, I get a, a producer from Spotify reaching out to me that they're looking for a third host for their morning show, and I'm getting, somebody reaching out about working on a television show. And then somebody wanted to cast me for another television show. So all these things hitting me at one time. And I remember kind of thinking like, yes, this is everything I've been working for and I can't lose. One of these things is bound to happen. And what kind of happened periodically throughout that time with Spotify, it was like they kept having me re-audition. And I just kind of had this vision in my mind of like, either way, like not either way, that this is going to be my thing, right? I'm not only leaving the Breakfast Club, but now I'm also kind of becoming their competition. I'm going to be a part of another morning show, and I'm going to be proving all the people who are hating on me wrong, and all these different things, right? I was looking at it from a place of emptiness where I was looking for that validation. And the process turned out to be far harder than I could have ever expected. And it was, I would audition, and it was supposed to be like, all right, we're gonna let after this month of auditions, and they would put me up against somebody else back and forth. And then I was like, okay, we liked you better than that person. Now we're gonna put somebody else, and they kept extending, and this went on for probably 6 to 7 months until it just went completely dark. I got ghosted. Didn't hear anything about it. And the whole time, all of those negative thoughts that I've ever had in my life began creeping in, where it was, the reason that they're not giving you the gig right now is because you're just not good enough. You're not talented enough to be in a position like this one. And every other negative thought that kind of came across. And it was like little by little eating away at my confidence. It was almost like a really toxic relationship, right? And then, I don't hear anything probably for almost 2 months. And then I just see a public post about how the show got canceled entirely, right? And even though obviously there's a lot of shit going on behind the scenes that had nothing to do with me, where the show was on the verge of not even existing anymore, I think at that point, my entire, view of myself based upon where I thought the trajectory of my career was going to go, it was shattered. And then, I don't hear anything about this other audition that I went on. And, months go by, nothing. And then the TV show thing where it's like, literally we're still in like almost a 2-year process at this point of dragging it out. So like all the things where I was like, one thing's bound to work out, nothing worked out. And even though I have this podcast and even though I am moving into a space of being financially free, it's like that little kid inside of me that was hurting and always felt like he wasn't good enough was still lingering around. And I noticed that my goals began to get smaller and smaller and smaller, right? I set a financial goal, and then eventually I start telling myself like, well, do you really need to make that much money? Why don't you could be happy with this amount of money, right? And that is true, but it was almost like I was diminishing my own capabilities and I was playing small ball, right? And anybody who was here for that interview we did with Lucy King, her talking about kind of the first thing you need to decide is like what you feel like you're worth, and that is what you're going to kind of use as your light. And I'm saying all of that to say, I think that brought me to a place where I wasn't completely doing myself a service and living up to who I'm capable of being. And I think that all of us sort of fall into that, right? I think that's where the lack of fulfillment comes from. That is where the self-doubt, the lack of confidence, all of these different things come from the idea of just like feeling like we're not enough and then giving ourselves an out, to kind of say, like, oh, gave it my best shot type of thing, or to not hold ourselves accountable for not doing what we need to do, right? And now when I talk about the veil being lifted, I'm walking into like what I feel like a new season of my life where I'm stepping into being the person I was always meant to be, and stepping into confidence and stepping into owning a room and taking up space and, not minimizing myself for anybody, and knowing my value, and accepting nothing less than it. Like I even went out and like just bought a whole new wardrobe this week, like spent more money than I probably should have, but it was just like this symbolism, and I like cleaned out my closet and I have a bunch of bags I'm taking to Goodwill. And it was just like, I'm taking over this new phase of my life in every single way, and be it how I show up to friendships that I want, or potential relationships or career opportunities. It's like, I have a baseline and I'm not accepting anything less. If you can't meet me there, I'm sorry. I'm not going back in life. And I think that is something that has completely changed my mood for like the last, few weeks or whatever it is. Like, I'm genuinely living in a place of fulfillment and living in this place of like calm right now, knowing that I have everything I need. I'm capable of doing everything I want to do, and anything that I genuinely want to do, I'm going to do it. It's going to happen. We're just waiting for the time that it actually ends up presenting itself, right? And because of that, I can already see how my interactions with people are drastically different, right? The type of people that are finding themselves into my circle are drastically different people, right? Because I'm just giving off this different energy of knowing I'm getting to exactly where I want to be, and I'm also very specific and aware of where I want to be. So that's something I kind of wanted to share, because I think we talk about self-awareness, and I see it in all of you as we've been meeting up, where it's kind of just like little by little you're recognizing more about yourself and maybe understanding yourself a little bit more. And maybe even if you're not taking all of the actions that you want to right now, it's like even just being aware of some of the tendencies that you might want to change. Like, that's a huge thing to kind of keep in mind. And for me, that it all starts with that self-awareness, and then now moving into a phase of saying, this is the version of who I want to be. And how does that person act, right? How does that person speak? How are they when they enter a room? What do they demand when they're worthy of it, right? What is the type of respect, the type of attention, the type of salary, whatever it is that type of person lives? Like, that's who I am right now. I'm redefining myself. I'm rebranding myself, right? In that same way, and making sure that everything I do is through the lens of living as that person, as that version of myself that I want to be. And that is obviously a journey, but it's like, man, once you begin to correct some of the negative mindset and start replacing it and forcibly replacing it with the positive stuff, you feel drastically different. Like, last thing I'll say on that is, I have this loop in my mind that always happens, where if I have like a down moment, something in my brain says, you got to get your life together. I could have my life together completely, but I still tell myself, you got to get your life together, right? And that's old programming from like years ago, when I felt like everybody was passing me by and I didn't have a dollar to my name and I'm still in my parents' basement. And that's where that loop is coming from. And then now recognizing that, and whenever that loop comes in, I hit it back with telling myself really who the fuck I am, right? And who I'm going to be, and the person that I want to be. And it's just that conversation that's happening. And I am noticing little by little that new version of myself is becoming louder and louder. The voice of that version of myself is becoming louder and louder in my mind. And it's again, just awareness, and then creating that habit that as soon as a negative thought comes in, you're hitting it back with a positive one, right? And I hope this doesn't sound too like, I don't know, fucking hokey or anything like that. But it's something that's been working for me as of late, and I feel drastically different as a result of it. And I've noticed my interactions with people are drastically different. So it's like it is a real tangible thing. And it's something I want to share with everybody because I think we're all kind of at a point where we're trying to maybe redefine this next chapter of our lives. And I think it's important to begin to kind of have those conversations with yourself and, define exactly who that person is that you want to be, right? I think that's sort of the next stage of the things that we're talking about when it comes to goal setting and creating a long-term goal for the rest of the year. It's being as specific as possible, right? Because that's when your mind begins to look for the opportunities and gives you reminders of things, right? It's not about saying, I just want to be a better person. It's like, well, what does a better person actually look like? What do they sound like? What does their everyday life look like? What do their interactions with others look like? You have to be very, very specific to train your brain so that it's like, for me, I lack confidence in almost every other area of my life aside from when I feel like I'm in a power position or I have to lead something, right? So if the mailman is coming by and like I'll give them the most awkward hello ever, or I'll just sit in my car or sit by the door waiting for them to go by, so I don't actually have to have an awkward conversation with them, and that's like my own social anxiety, my own whatever it is, my own lack of confidence. And even like this last week, when I noticed I'm feeling that feeling like, oh, you have a couple minutes, you could probably hide before they see you, forcing myself to stay there and give them the good morning greeting. And if it's a fucking awkward conversation that I stumble through, whatever it is, but I've pushed myself to do something out of the norm. I've pushed myself to do something that the evolved version of myself would do, right? And it's little things like that. And having the awareness of knowing exactly who I want to be then allows me to pick up on those situations and act accordingly. So that's my little spiel that I wanted to kind of open up to y'all about in regards to a lot of the work that I'm doing and that we're doing collectively. All right, I'm going to hop in here real quick. We'll take a quick break and then we'll be right back. All right, we are back now more for my conversation with the Just Be Social Club. Now, with that said, before we kind of get into homework and things like that, let's obviously do what we do, where let's check in with everybody on what we talked about last time. I know some of you weren't here for the last one, so if you are behind, it's okay. You can fill us in on what you have going on right now. But yeah, whoever wants to kind of go, let's open the floor up as we always do.
I can go. All right, I think I went last time, so I'll just kick it off, get it out of the way.
And how are you genuinely? Not just like one word, I'm good. How are you actually?
No, I mean, I think I'm here is the word that I have to use. I'm going to focus on the term of intentionally, like being present. Just the act of showing up, I think, has been my theme for today. I worked from home and decided to stay home so that I could integrate the things that I had been pushing off for the last couple weeks, just to go back and focus on doing those for myself. And so I've been literally with my headphones in all day, listening to podcasts, taking work calls, going back to what I was doing. But I think one of the things I wanted to, that I wrote down that you were talking about was talking about, constructing the identity of, who you want to be, who you show up as. And I found that probably, being a theater kid and being on a stage from like the time that I could walk and all of these things really built up a big construct of an identity that I am cracking open that like image of self to discern, like, do I even ascribe to this? Is this who I want to be? Is this who I want to show up as? And I've been actively deconstructing that image of myself over the last, I don't know, let's say the pandemic, let's say last 3 years, because everybody stayed home in 2020. When we met, like we had a lot of time to just chat in that way. But I think, so one of the things that I look at is when I have those thoughts, I try to pause and discern, like, who does this thought belong to? Is this mine, or is this, someone else's projection of me? And then the other part too is just, I feel like, I try to compartmentalize really well based on the goals that I have and the different parts of myself, from work to creative and what I do outside of work. But deconstructing that is also leading me to see others around me kind of break that down too. And that's a really beautiful thing, whether it's like this group or, people that I interact with and having conversations, just asking them like, well, why do you feel the need or that you should do this? Who's telling you that? You don't have to do anything. And then, relaying and building into people to explain that, confidence is fake. And how do I know that? Because, I grew up on a stage. So I learned as a skill set to like turn it on and off as needed for who I'm interacting with. And so I think I kind of have the opposite of you, whereas like, sure, I'll always say hi to the mailman or, like he's
Right.
passing by, like I don't think about it, but I overthink and deconstruct the interaction afterward and my own thoughts of like, why did I do that? I don't even want to talk to her, so it's really deconstructing and trying to make sure that like I'm coming across as genuine and truly just being accountable to myself, living my own truth, and then dealing with whatever the fallout is for someone else that is like, well, I never saw you as this way, because they had a different perception of me and a relationship that was built upon someone else's construct. So as the world breaks apart, it's social constructs, and we do this with our group together. That's really where my focus has been, and just trying to just observe, deconstruct, and just focus on, maintaining my accountability to myself for like my goals, because that's really what it's rooted in. I can't be anything for anyone else if I'm really not taking the time to be there for myself. So that's been my revelation for, planning for this call, planning for today, and just wanting to be here for you all. So
I love that. And just, you don't have to tell us, but just out of curiosity, did you have any luck with setting some of like the goals for the next, whatever, 3-6 months, things that we were talking about?
I did. I wrote a piece of paper with 4 squares on it and put like the 3, 6, 1 year, 5 year. And like, I like to see it that way visually. And I started with like, let me just write down 1 for each. And then I left it alone and I came back and opened it, because they all live, in my head. They're up here. Sure. But the whole point of like, and I've also written them all down somewhere. Like, it's just the matter of like putting it in one specific spot that I can keep coming back to for being accountable. It is good, to see it on paper, because if I look at that paper in the morning when I'm looking to set my intentions and I'm planning out my calendar, I will make sure that part of me has to have that spontaneity. Like I don't plan like the 3 months ahead, but I can plan from a weekly basis of like, okay, where am I going to block in the time that's contributing to one of those 4 color blocks? So I color coded the calendar to kind of match, just to like trigger, like that's the 3-month goal, that's the 6-month goal, and align it to like tell myself like it's already mine. So I'm locked in there from the mindset. I'm trying to get away from the moments that the negative self-talk tries to creep back in. Like I got to go really hard to be like, get it out of here. That's not mine. But it's hard, because even when you feel like you're running and you go, it's in that moment when you stop that the fear creeps in for me, that like those thoughts are going to catch back up to me, that I don't want to run from them. I want to address it in the moment and break it apart. And that's where I came back to that word with deconstruction and that reflection and just sitting with it. Like that's really what I've been doing most of this year, is just doing a lot of observing and sitting in the quiet and letting the thought just come and then pass me by, trying to, observe it. I am not trying to absorb it. So that's where I'm at.
Ooh, that's a bar right there. Not trying to, you're trying to observe it, not absorb it. I love that. I think, I've actually been doing the same thing where I'm like, all right, like this thought wants to be heard. I'm just going to like poke holes in whatever narrative you're trying to tell me until like the thought just goes away, right? So if it's telling me that, whatever negative thought, I have a lot of evidence that, is counter to that. And eventually that thought kind of just goes away because it doesn't have the basis to stand on anymore. So that's definitely something I've been practicing as well. And I think you touched on something really interesting about the idea of like identity almost, right? And like, being this theater kid, right? And then that kind of becoming your identity and how people know you, and then expecting you to kind of be, I'm sure probably like you're expected to be the conversation starter and the one like carrying the conversation and the energy in the room and all these different things, right? And even at times where you don't feel like that, you still are kind of given like that's your role, that's the character that you're playing, right? In this friend dynamic or family dynamic, whatever it might be. And I find it really interesting, and I think it's important to like really have that conversation with yourself about your identity and what you're allowing to take over as your identity, right? Because I know for me, something I've really been unlearning is I had a huge sort of confidence shift happen when I began sort of my career in radio and began having a lot more high profile opportunities and things like that, right? And it was like I was using that to kind of like fill the confidence void that I had, right? And eventually it just became who I believed I was. And if I didn't have it, I didn't believe that, I was going to be as good as I am or as attractive to other people, be it friendship or romantically, right? I wasn't going to be as interesting, like for me, even like when it came to dating, it was like I couldn't wait till it got to the part of the conversation where they asked me what I did for a living, because I knew that I had an interesting job that was going to bring up a million and one questions, and then I was going to be able to get that boost of confidence to just carry this thing, and I had it in the bag basically at that point, right? And like, yeah, I lived with that for a while, and it served the younger version of me better than I'm proud that it did. But now I'm like, I don't want that to be the thing that draws people to me anymore. You know what I mean? Like I want to make sure that like the real version of me and not the thing that I do is what is sort of bringing people around to me, and then being okay with the fact that even if that version of me isn't as exciting to them and they aren't interested in in me as they would have been had I've led with, kind of the braggadocious career things, knowing that then that's just not somebody I need to have as a part of my life, or it's not a dynamic that I need to be a part of, and knowing that I'm probably better off. I know I'm better off because that means I don't have to play a character every time I'm around this person, you know, and I don't have to, portray a certain lifestyle, or or fucking feel like I have to post every single thing on social media to keep up this thing, and or pretend like I'm busier than I actually am, like stupid shit like that we like just start doing stupid things. Like this is it's like character building is good when you're making sure that it's like building it in a positive way that actually like feeds your soul, as opposed to then just like building this facade that is incredibly empty but has these like very sporadic highs. And I think that's what I'm trying to get away from, is I'm trying to get to this place of like being even keeled, instead of like dopamine, crash, dopamine. You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm trying to get away from, because that's what it was. It was like when I'm around people, when I'm on those dates, or I was at an event and people want to talk to me and they want to do this, that's the dopamine hit. And then I go home and I have a weekend by myself and I feel like shit and I think I'm worthless and all these things. And that was the cycle, back and forth. And now I'm just trying to get to like a place of shedding that and loving the person that I am, and understanding that that's all the validation that I need. And I don't have to play some sort of character. Like I'm good right now where I am. And, whatever is meant to kind of be in my orbit is going to be at that point. So I just hijacked, I think, the whole conversation there. But I think this idea of identity is just so fucking fascinating, because we end up doing it without even realizing. I think Will Smith talks about this, like the idea of playing a character and having to shed that, and find out really who you are, because oftentimes we conflate what we do with actually who we are as a human being. But thank you for sharing that. That provoked a lot of thoughts in my mind that I hope were helpful to some of y'all. Whoever wants to go next, to feel free.
With that, I'll jump in because it's so funny. I was just telling Brenda earlier today how I was not there for the last meeting, but I was listening to the podcast this morning, and I was like, "Oh, when was this? This was like beginning of May. Wait, that's exactly how I was feeling." And still, like, life is still lifing, as we say. But also, like, so much is so different in just a short amount of weeks. And then, like, hearing you guys talk about identity and how, like, we tend to, like, confuse who we are with what we do. Like, it's just so on target for what's going on in my life. Which I guess the first question was, how are we feeling? And I think right now I'm like happy and hopeful with like sprinkles of sad in there. But, Dramos, I think, I don't think everybody knows, but I work doing events out here in LA. And I just said goodbye to that a few weeks ago. And
Congrats.
I've been... Yeah, I mean, it's bittersweet right now, but thank you. was a long time coming. I think the last time I talked to you guys, I said like I struggle really hard with like boundaries and putting myself first. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just always that person, whether it's like in family or in friendships too. Like and even in my career, like just always, what does everybody else need? And then like that's that's the role that I play.
Mm.
Um, even if it's hurting me, even if it's damaging me.
Yeah.
And so I've been working on doing events for like 4 years now, since before the pandemic. And I feel like there's a specific event that I do that, more people know about. And I realized that that kind of became my identity. Like everywhere I went, like no matter what it was, like anything related to the industry was like, oh, this lady, she does this event, she does this event. Like she's who you want to talk to if you do this, and if you want to go or like be part of this event. And so like letting go of that a few weeks ago was really, really tough because it's who I've been for 4 years. Like I don't know who I am without that, like in the scope of like the industry that I work in. And so it's been kind of tough, but I know it's like what I needed to do. I needed to like go on my own path and do work that feels more authentic to me, as well as like that works in a way that works for me, something that's sustainable for me. And that space just wasn't it. But again, because it's been who I am for the last 4 years, it's like also sad because I feel like a part of me is gone. A part of me is like just dead now.
Yeah.
And also like a lot of people don't know. So people still message me about it, tag me on things. And I'm like, a little piece of my heart dies every time because it wasn't just coworkers. It was like friends. It's people that I've known for years. My partner was somebody that I've known since high school. So 13, 14 years that we've known each other. And it's now like gone. And then, this morning I also spoke to my boss at my other job and my last day is September 29th. So it's like two big changes that, for somebody who all of my life I've identified myself as what I do, as like, the classes I took in high school, like the activities that I did, like I'm just the person. I identify who I am with what I'm doing. And now that like both of those things are ending, I'm like, so who am I? Like, who am I when all that is gone? I'm like, what do I want? And what's next?
Yeah.
And so it's like a weird time, but also like a very good time because I can do whatever I want. Sort of. But yeah, it's happy and hopeful and sad. How I'm feeling right now.
I'm like, a part of me is screaming with excitement internally right now for you. Because I just think like I know I understand it's not easy, right? It's like a breakup. Even if you knew that relationship ended, you still miss parts of it, right? You miss the comfort of it. You miss, whatever sort of habits you guys created or traditions. And it's the same thing where like every time somebody sees you and they ask about that person, you have to like explain what happened. And it's just like, you're kind of over it eventually. And it's a whole process to get through that, even if you know that the relationship was, not the one for you. So I totally get that. And I think there is going to be a bit of like an ego death that you have a little bit, I know that I had that where, you, I don't know. I mean, I hope not, but I'm sure there are gonna be people who slowly stop speaking to you because you can no longer get them into this party, like the superficial friends that you had. And I know for me, it was like, it seemed like, I was less desirable to a degree when I no longer had that door, that connection, or was working at a certain place or whatever it is, and I had to like let go of that and remind myself of like that I'm moving into a far more, a place of more fulfillment rather than sort of these superficial interactions and things like that, but it is going to be a process. But I think don't allow yourself to kind of skate over the fact that you have made this decision for yourself as well, right? Particularly, I think for you, talking about somebody who has a hard time putting yourself first, like you just put yourself first in one of the most difficult ways humanly possible. You know what I mean? Like it's not easy to leave jobs that you're comfortable at, that even if they don't fulfill you, you have that routine. And especially if you enjoy working with the people that you work with, it makes it that much harder. Those are relationships that are going to change in some sort of way. You're not going to see them every day or whatever it might be, right? You're not going to talk as often on such a regular basis as you did. So, obviously there's that difficult part about it. And you have to give yourself that credit. Like that shit's not easy. Like that's hard. It's hard to really just fucking take that leap finally, right? We all talk about it. I talk about it like it's so easy. And yeah, it is as easy as just saying I quit to a degree, but also there's so much more that goes into it, and the fact that you went and did it, I don't want you to skate across that. You know what I mean? Like be really grateful for yourself right now. And I know it's scary. I know that there are a lot of unknowns and uncertainty, and change in general is scary and uncomfortable, but like you just made a really big change for your life that I think can set the tone for the rest of it, right? Where you can then maybe get into the habit of knowing when to put yourself first and making that a regular thing, and this is kind of the first step into that. And, I think as you begin to see that, your life isn't ending and things are going to work out in a positive way, that you can then challenge yourself to continue to keep doing things like this, as far as putting yourself first, in other aspects of your life. So that's amazing. I'm genuinely excited and really happy for you. And like, regardless of how anything ever turns out, like this is a moment in your life that you should always look back upon and reflect upon as a moment that you're incredibly proud of yourself, because it really is not easy at all. Like I don't know about you guys, but I watched my dad work an entire job that he hated his entire fucking life, and he just didn't quit. You know what I mean? He never took it upon himself to try and find out something else. So that's not an easy thing to do. So make sure you're like giving yourself a pat on the back, and maybe throw yourself like a little mini celebration, because you definitely deserve it. That's a huge deal.
I'm like internally celebrating while like crying, like it's sessions, like cry, then like be happy, then cry, then be happy. It's exactly what you said. It's a breakup. It's like I'm, but it's okay.
Yeah. Fine. It is.
If I could chime in.
Go ahead. Yeah, please.
Yeah, no. At the beginning, Dramos, you said, what would the evolved version of me do? And I think like Sayuri, this is the perfect example. Like the evolved version of you puts boundaries and puts yourself first, so you already like met a piece of that future you that evolved you through this action, and yeah, celebrate as big as you can.
Not for nothing. I think you're kind of glowing. Like it's like I could genuinely see a bit of a difference in you, like than I've seen. Honestly.
I mean, honestly, I was telling Brenda this too. Like a lot of it is because of this group. Like every month I come and I tell you guys, haha, I didn't set my boundaries again. Haha, I didn't, say what I said I would, and I didn't do it. But like, kind of just have to. So
that's amazing.
Oh, and by the way, I wasn't here last time, and Brenda knows. But my 1-year goal is to move to New York. So see you soon.
Wow, amazing! This is big stuff. This is crazy. I'm so happy for you. I genuinely am really excited for you. This is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. All right, I'll hop in here again. We'll take another quick break and then we'll be back. All right, we are back, and now more from my conversation with the Just Be Social Club. Whoever wants to go next.
I just wanted to, because it's so funny that you guys are talking about this, because I'm reading a book that I don't know if you guys are familiar with. It just came out. It's called The Good Enough Job. And for me, the book is kind of preaching to the choir because I've already thought this way. Yeah. But it kind of talks about how we tend to make our jobs our identity, and how that's just pretty much setting yourself up for failure because you're constantly chasing the perfect job that is not there. And what we need to do is see a job more as a means to an end kind of thing. Right. Find the things about the job that makes you happy and focus on that, whether it's the money or if it's the hours or if it's, the people that you work with. But you can't think, oh my God, no, I can't. I mean, again, it's a personal thing, but it's very tricky when you think of your job as your calling, right? Or something that I'm meant to do, or something that I need to identify with, because otherwise we're always going to be chasing something that's never going to be there. And the book it's funny because it kind of compares it to religion, right? Because you're chasing something that you can't see. Therefore, it turns into something that you do for your entire life. And I mean, with religion, you die and we'll never know if there's something there or not, right? But with your job is not going to be there in whatever afterlife you believe in. So you have to be careful when you look at jobs as something that you are meant to do, because unfortunately, as you all know, for companies, we're just numbers and they don't care about you the way that you might care about them. I mean, they might tell you that they do, but then if there are layoffs or budget cuts, you might be the first to go. Yeah. So it's just funny that you're all mentioning that. So it's a book that I haven't finished it yet. So for all I know, the second half sucks, but the first half is great. So again, it's called The Good Enough Job. It's really interesting.
I love that. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, I think, and because it's a losing battle, right? Because if you use that as your identity and it's the thing that like is your sort of key to enter a specific room, it works sometimes. But then what happens when there's somebody who has a cooler job than you, right? And then you feel like shit about yourself because now the attention's not on you, and that was like your thing, right? That was like what made you, if it's like dating, that was what made you appealing to the other person. And then like the other person comes in and they're richer, better job, and whatever it is. And then it's like, fuck, now I'm going to bust my ass and make sure I get to their position, right? And then you do it. And then guess what?
Another fucking person.
Ends. Right. It's literally a game that never fucking ends. And you're just like chasing shit that doesn't matter whatsoever. And like next thing you know, 10 years have passed by and you're like, man, what the fuck have I just been working so hard for? So yeah, no, I love that you brought that up. Do you want to go next since you were on the mic over here?
Goals.
You don't have to. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention something that some of you might identify with. I've been working on this music thing, this album that I've been wanting to put out for a while, and it's always like I need it to be perfect. You know how we do that, but my goal is to kind of let go of that false idea of perfection and hopefully put it out in the next couple of months. So I have to hold myself accountable to that.
That's amazing, man. I love to hear that. And how have you been? We haven't gotten a chance to talk a little bit. How have you?
Honestly, Dramos, I feel like the thing that you mentioned at the beginning that you went through.
Yeah,
I feel like I've had that, and I agree with you. It's a different outlook. It's when you find happiness with what you have. I feel like, at least for me, and I don't want to jinx myself or anything. Sure. But I feel like everything else is extra. Right. So I have this great relationship with my girlfriend, this great dog, but it's all extra, right? It just makes everything better. But if like my job were to be taken away tomorrow or something like that, like I think I have the tools to kind of keep going. So yeah, man, I think I'm in a good place.
I love to hear that. Yeah, I think it's yeah, you're talking about the shit that actually matters, right? And then placing it's like placing proper value. And I think as human beings, our value system is so fucking all over the place, right? And like you see it, like the pandemic kind of opened some people's eyes, other people went right back to it. But some people were kind of just like realizing, oh, I actually like enjoy having dinner with my family every night, or being able to, spend this quality time with my partner rather than like being at the office pulling 80-hour shifts a week or things like that, and like I thought that it was important to get that promotion, but now I'm realizing like if it comes at the cost of quality time with my family, it's probably not, right? So it's like understanding where the value should go, right? And like that's why even when it comes to like material shit, like I don't think there's anything wrong if I enjoy clothing or I enjoy this. It's as long as I don't place unnecessary value on it, as long as it doesn't come in front of things that actually matter, right? And I think that's where we all as human beings kind of have to begin to get our ducks in a row a little bit, is like creating a better value system of shit that actually fulfills us. And then, everything else is just a little trickle down that gives us, a little extra boost here every once in a while. So I love that you brought that up. Anybody else want to go next?
I can go, I guess.
Okay.
Hi. So obviously I wasn't here the last meeting, but I did listen to your podcast episode of it. So as far as goals, I actually don't have any goals. That sounds like crazy, but I mean, we've touched on this before, that I just make goals for the sake of making goals to check off my list. So I feel like I'm trying to get into this healthy place of having like meaningful goals. And I kind of just, I guess my goal then would just be to be in the present. I think I don't know if one of you actually posted it on Instagram, but I just saw it about like anxiety is all about living in the future.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm like, oh my God, yes. And that's what I do. I'm just like constantly like, okay, and then in a year, what am I going to do? And then in 5 years, like I literally spiraled and made like this list of all the vacations I'm going to be taking in the next 10 years based on the age of my children, because I'm crazy. So I don't have goals. That's my goal, is to not have any goals. And just to be more present. I do have a project that I'm working on with my sister that is, I guess, a goal. But that's more just for like, there's no reason. It's just to learn something new and to have fun and to spend time with my sister and to have like an outlet, like a creative outlet. So that's where I'm at right now.
That's an amazing reason in itself, though. Like I don't want us to ever get caught up in, and this, I'm speaking to myself right now as I say this as well. I don't want to ever get caught up in devaluing something just because it might not have a monetary value. You know what I mean? Like the idea of like Chelsea watching movies, she's not probably, I don't think you're getting paid to do that, right? It doesn't have a monetary value for you. But if it makes you come out of the weekend like, a more free person, the weight off your shoulders at that point because you had that relaxing time being entertained by movies that you like, then that does have a substantial amount of value, So I think I want to make sure that we don't, look at everything that way. I have a tendency to do that, where if I do any sort of project, I'm thinking, okay, how does this become something that becomes bigger, and then it turns into this and it turns into that, and I have to like catch myself constantly to just kind of get lost in the moment. And the second thing I want to say that I really love and am impressed by is like you just showed self-awareness in that moment where you said my goal is to not have goals, because you saw how when you set the goals, you started spiraling into overdoing it at that point, right? So like you're being aware of the fact that this is what happens to you when you do this one thing. So what is the healthier version of it for me? And then doing it in a circle where you were told to set a goal to then have the complete opposite of it is also like an act of bravery and boundary in itself, if that makes sense, because it's like, it's easy to feel like, fuck, everybody has a goal or they're doing this. And my goal is to not have a goal. Right. But to go against what the crowd is doing is you walking in your authenticity, which I want to make sure you kind of like understand and really kind of like give yourself a pat on the back for that as well. I think that's like next level of self-awareness and sort of even confidence as well.
Yeah. Thank you. It made me kind of like, the goal chasing, like it was making me more anxious, and then it was kind of making me a hater because, I'm just like comparing myself and like, well, she met my goal and, that's not who I want to be. So just need to kick down a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. I genuinely do. And I think like keeping that in mind when it comes to the things that we're striving for this year, it could be just being a more present human being, right? Like that could be the goal of you kind of wanting to get to that place where you are like consistently able to really be in the present moment. And to me, like if I got to the end of this year and I became a far more present person, like that's a fucking win at the end of the day, like, so just remembering when we talk about goals, when we talk about these things, I'm not necessarily talking about monetary. I'm not necessarily talking about something that flips your life completely upside down. It can be if that's what you're feeling like you're being called to do, but it also could just be changing certain habits that then allow you to enjoy life and feel a little bit more fulfilled on a regular basis, right? And that's like the ultimate win right there. Even with like the big goals, the idea of it is we're trying to invite more fulfillment into our lives. So I think keeping all of that in mind is beautiful. I'm glad that you brought that up. And how are you feeling, by the way?
I'm feeling sick, but other than that, I'm good. I just got out. I'm on summer break, so this is my first day off. So I feel a little bit like it's new, not having something that I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like, I guess this is actively working on being present. Like, I don't know. I don't really know how I'm doing.
I think, I think you're on the right path. I genuinely feel that way. I love that you, all that you just said. And I think it's easy to kind of like, from going from the chaos of being a teacher to then just like, it's just a hard stop. It's going to be an adjustment period in general, so don't beat yourself up too much.
I wanted to chime in something. What comes up for me that I'm seeing is that you are being very intentional. So even like your intention of like not having the goal, right? Even like, as you said, we're all going to come up with goals and you were like, no. So I think even going forward now, as you start to not set the goals or have certain milestones you want to reach, it's setting the intention behind it. Like, what is the intention behind you just being present? Why are you trying to be more present? And once you get the intention, that I think is what I'm starting to see fuels everything else. Because if the intention is like, because she made it and I'm going to make it, it's going to fall apart. But if the intention is because I'm trying to feel better, because I want to become aware of me, so on and so forth, whatever your intention is, I think it's going to help out.
I'm literally going to write that down.
I love that. That very, very well said. Nice addition.
And I'll just add, for me, I feel super excited, super grateful because I'm going to Puerto Rico next week.
Yes.
Without the kids. It's my first solo trip ever. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Amazing. Yeah, Brenda won a free trip to Puerto Rico somehow. So that's the universe is universing in a positive way, and she's going to like it's like you call it like it's like a personal growth conference almost, right? Would you kind of call it that?
Yeah, it's a money. The person throwing it is doing it's a summit. It's a summit. Yeah. They're gonna have all kinds of Latina coaching speakers. Hey, can you give me 1 second, please? And so yeah, I manifested that shit, you guys. So it works. But the intention was that the intention was that I wanted to surround myself with people that are doing the same thing, that have the intentions that I'm having. So yeah.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. You're our last one, man. How are you doing, first and foremost?
Doing pretty okay, actually. Wasn't busy with any of the set your goals or anything, so it's quite relieved that Nicole had the same point of view. But no, I just I wasn't, but somehow I still was. But yeah, I just said, okay, May is April has been it's a really busy month. I'll just May I'll take time for myself. See what I can come up with, and whatever happens. I did had some small trip planned, so I went on that.
Nice. Where'd you go?
London.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, it's a 1 hour flight, so it's not that big.
Yeah, for me, it sounds extravagant. That's one of my bucket list places to go. So
it's a nice place to go. Yeah, it would be like for you going to it's a 1 hour flight from your place.
Boston, maybe. Yeah, not quite as nice as London. But go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, sure. But yeah, one funny thing had happened because it's I got sick 2 times in the month of May. It's just strange because or not so strange if you think about it. but from a busy period, you're starting to slow down, and all of a sudden you become sick, which I don't. It's like getting sick on holidays. That part. So that happened, but if you couldn't do anything, you're taking all of the rest that apparently your body needed and your mind needed, and then you do sort of one, and it really forces you to sit down and do nothing, because you can't do nothing, and then start thinking about what it is you're doing and what is it you actually want, and how do you see things in life. And that's just what I did, and let's say for the month of May. But really busy with setting goals, but thinking like, where are you now in life, and what went well, because and what went wrong, why did it went wrong, and yeah, like because something I said in the past, I sort of like gave too much of myself, and that's why I couldn't partly you start not realizing your own goals because you're fulfilling goals of other people, but then start realizing what is it that I actually want, not in details, 3 months, 6 months, not details, but what is it generally what I want, and start planning for it, start thinking about that, and gives you calm, brings you some inner calm that apparently I needed, because you were sitting still anyways, watching Netflix and while recovering. So yeah, it it gave me energy to finally see, okay, face all of those hard parts that sort of have a look in the mirror, and that but it's quite healing, let's say it like that.
That's beautiful. I think,
Yeah.
it's like the same thing I was saying. It's like, we're not giving ourselves enough credit. Like, the average person isn't doing that shit. They're just literally fucking pushing forward. You know what I mean? They're not like, people will have their world burning around them and they will never ask why. They'll literally just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Like, that's what the average person will do, So again, it's like the fact that every single person is like slowing down to just like think about things just a little bit deeper and kind of ask a question of yourself. Like, that is a gigantic step that is miles above what the average person does. You know what I mean? Like, most people will just be miserable there, throughout the week. They live for the weekend, just keep reliving the same fucking cycle instead of getting to the bottom of like what is actually making them miserable, So the fact that you're having that realization, the fact that you're just like asking yourself what I want, which again is something that is like so foreign to us on a regular basis. And then also like recognizing that, all right, I had a crazy April, I went hard, and now I'm going to have the discipline to set the boundary to give myself a little bit of time off in May, And again, it's just like that kind of thinking, as simple as it sounds and as easy it is to gloss over, that is like could be a gigantic improvement to our quality of life if we regularly adapt that sort of mindset. You know what I mean? Like, if Chelsea regularly adapts the moment saying, all right, this week I feel empty, I'm taking the weekend for myself. You do that on a regular basis, you're going to be healing yourself, right? You're going to be going through the motions of all of us as a human being, as we always do. But now you're giving yourself the tool set to then get back down to baseline so you can continue enjoying life, rather than just like harboring all of these emotions, or even just physical exhaustion that you're just trying to, drink another fucking coffee to get through that day. You know what I mean? Like, rather than doing that, we're actually really trying to like get to a point of healing. Like you said, I think, like, let's not gloss over that at all. Like, let's all give ourselves credit for that, because that is huge. Again, like, I would survey my group of friends, and I can guarantee you none of them were even thinking about this whatsoever. So
Yeah,
it's huge.
you make a really big point, because it's the same thing that Pablo also said in what he said. Like, if I talk to a couple of to my they're my closest friends because I know them since high school.
Right.
So they're friends, but I we were never on the same frequency. Let's say it like that.
Sure.
They have, but yeah. How long? I don't know. Yeah, high school, so that's 18 years for me now
Mm.
that I've known them. Yeah, you don't want to get rid of them because you know them for 18 years. But
Sure.
all of them hate their jobs, which makes me wonder why you're still in the job. But listen, I don't like parts of my job, but in general, I love my job. That's why I do it.
Mm-hmm.
But then why are you doing it? And because this and that mentality, okay, but what is it that you actually want to do then in your life instead of doing nothing?
Well, most people don't ask themselves that, right? They don't
Yeah.
give themselves the permission to ask those questions. And
Mhm.
I think that's why like stuff like this is so great, because you get to be reminded that like I have a similar
Yeah.
setup as well, where I have friends that I've known for a while that I love, and we have a good time together, but we don't operate on the same frequency as far as like how we view life, and we can't relate on that level. We don't have those conversations, so
Yeah.
it's rare that I get to have conversations like this one. I have maybe one person in my life that I could think of that's on the same page, but that's why shit like this is amazing. I love that we get to all kind of get together, and it's so special that we do. And I don't want to take up any more of anybody's time. I know we're going a little long on here, but yeah, I hope you guys can make it out to the live one that we're going to do. I'm really excited to allow you to like really also pick other people's brains who are working in this, and like people who do this professionally and are just living in this world of like trying to better themselves. I love the idea of like everybody maybe having the opportunity to ask a question and just be inspired by someone, and keep surrounding yourself with people that inspire you, even if it's just through a screen like this. So hope you enjoyed that conversation from my mastermind group, the Just to Be Social Club. We'll kind of recap in the next segment for our conclusion, Stu.
Time for conclusion, Stu.
All right, so I just kind of want to touch on a couple things that I talked about in that mastermind. A couple of things that stuck out to me. I was reflecting a bit on how I had allowed some of the disappointments of past endeavors to craft a mindset where I minimized my goals and dreams, right? Where instead of dreaming as big as I could possibly dream, I kind of dumped it down a little bit because I was scared of the disappointment, right? I would rather have the easy win than go for the big thing and be disappointed by it, by the fact that it didn't work out. And that one hit me like a ton of bricks even recently, right? I mean, that hit me like a ton of bricks now. As I reflect on recent things, right? So even like I'd mentioned, I get this correspondence from my dream partnership, essentially, career wise, and I begin to not even believe that I'm good enough, even though that this is a conversation happening, because I am indeed qualified, right? That's the only reason why this person's even answering me. And I even noticed it. I was like sending out some emails this week to a couple new venues, and I found myself intimidated and nervous to send the email as far as like, future bookings and things of that nature. Because I felt like I wasn't good enough. And like the irony is I've done bigger venues and things of that, or worked with similar artists, but it was because I deemed them to be the cool people, and they would judge me as me not being cool enough or good enough or whatever it is, right? And again, those are all limiting beliefs that are rooted so deeply in childhood. And, I was kind of like getting down a little bit. Like I lost that initial excitement and that fire from the response I got to the email. And the old programming began to kick back in. It began to tell me that I wasn't good enough to operate at this level. And I'm having this struggle, right? Because I have tangible proof. I'm looking at these videos of me playing these gigantic stages, and I have a credible resume. I was remaking my press kit the other day, and I was like, fuck, I can't believe how much I've done. Like, it's like I compartmentalized and forgot all the shit that I was doing as a DJ and producer. And I recognized a pattern where it was like, yo, you go, you do this thing, you get excited. Once you hear a couple no's, you take it as you take it to heart, as it means you're not supposed to be there, and you run away from it. Right? You run away from it. And you dumb down your goal, and you settle for something less than what you want. And then you're like, wait, what the fuck? I deserve so much more. And it's like this never ending cycle. And I think I just wanted to fight for people to hear this message of get out of your own fucking way. And I feel like I've said this so many times, but it's like we need the reminder, and we need to start carrying ourselves the way that we want to be fucking treated, right? It's like and I think that's what so much of this conversation. I'm listening to myself speak from a year ago. I think it was a little over a year ago. And I'm like, this dude was right. Why the fuck couldn't you just consistently follow this dude's instructions? And I think we just need consistent reminders. That's why I like pulling up some of these old conversations, because we need these reminders. And I think especially like as we're ending a year, I know for me this was a fucking brutal year. But there's that little light at the end of the tunnel, and you have to just drive 100 miles an hour at it. I always talk about there's a time to coast. There's a time to put your foot on the gas. Once you're given that little crack at the door, you have to go 100 miles an hour at it until you cannot go anymore. Right? Don't send 2 fucking emails. Send 200 emails. Exhaust yourself. Get to the point where you can no longer find new people to reach out to. Once that's the case, then, all right, I've exhausted this opportunity, and I can truly say it just wasn't meant for me. But until then, you have to keep driving 100 miles an hour at that little light that you're seeing at the end of the tunnel. And I'm saying this to my fucking self right now. It's kind of like, I know social media is different now because the algorithm is not in chronological order. But do you remember when you would be scrolling, and then you eventually would get to a point where it's like, sorry, no more new items to show you or whatever. And you're just like, fuck, now what do I do? That's what we have to get to when it comes to our dreams and goals and ideas, right? Especially these big ones that are scary and that require a lot of work, a lot of time and effort. I really think the only way you should be walking away from them is if you've exhausted every possible opportunity you could find or think of or create, or B, if something even better unexpectedly comes along and deviates. That's the only time you should stop. Now, obviously, different shit going on in our lives. We have to compartmentalize the attention we give each thing and prioritize where we put all our energy. We only have a limited resource of energy. But with that said, even if even with that, it's like, okay, you might have kids, you might have responsibilities. You can't spend, 8 hours a day working on your goal. So maybe that 200 emails, to stay with that example, is going to take you, 2 months to do rather than, 3 weeks or whatever it is, working 8 hours a day. Either way, at least you could say you exhausted yourself to the point of you did everything, right? And you have to just push past the limiting belief that tells you, oh, well, you didn't get a response. That's enough. You could stop, right? That's just a limiting belief. So many of us as kids were brought up with that. Parents who were living in survival mode, parents who didn't want to make a lot of noise. We talk about immigrant parents. Many of our parents, they just wanted us to fucking be able to live the American dream, right? And I don't know if anybody's looked around recently, but the American dream doesn't really seem to exist for the most part. So you might as well go after what actually truly makes you happy rather than some asinine idea of the ideal life, I guess. And yeah, and the idea of like, dude, be the person, like be that person today. I have to tell myself this all the time. If I'm going, DJing a place or whatever, like walk in like you're the fucking headliner, right? I mean, I am the headliner, but I still walk in like, no, to the door. Go, hey, I'm the DJ. I'm just gonna go. No, like no, I can announce myself. I can be like, hey, I want to get this, that, and obviously be polite and these different things. But it's like I've earned that right, and me humbling myself to the point that I'm like fucking, just awkward, socially awkward, makes people not take me seriously. Even though my resume speaks to it, what they're paying speaks to it, but me not carrying myself as such makes me get treated very differently by these people. And that's, I think, life. That's in the real world. All these things, like we talked about that, like dress for the job you want, carry yourself as the person you want to be. That's when people begin to take you seriously. Demand what you feel like you deserve. Don't allow the limiting beliefs to make yourself small. That only holds you back, and it's only going to leave you with regret. Time waits for fucking nobody, man. I think about that. I'm like, man, how much time did I waste making myself small? Doubting myself, not putting in all the fucking effort, right? I was reflecting on like right before the pandemic where I was as a DJ. I was like, man, you worked your fucking ass off. My last gig before the pandemic was playing in front of almost 2,000 people at Webster Hall in New York City. And if you're not from the New York City area, Webster Hall is a legendary club. The biggest of the biggest have played there. I mean, fucking Jay-Z played there. And that was my number one goal ever as a DJ. The venue I wanted to get into was Webster Hall main stage, and I played it. It was literally like a week or two before the world shut down. Well, I was a lie. I had one other gig after that. That literally the next day they canceled everything else. But anyway, for the sake of this story, it sounds better to say the last gig I played before it shut down was Webster Hall. Almost 2,000 people. Actually, it might have been more than 2,000. I think it is actually the capacity. Don't quote me on that. We'll see. Anyway, I played my dream venue to a sold-out crowd, opening for a gigantic touring artist as direct support. And obviously the fucking pandemic happens. The world is shut down. I can't do that. But my limiting belief, because I was already struggling with this, my limiting belief was telling me, you're just not good enough. Meanwhile, I'm literally playing my dream gig. And that year I had done like crazy other things. I played Vegas that year. I did a bunch of shit, like a lot of shit that year. Miami. Like I reflect back on now, like I really was living in a fog of my own self-doubt, telling me the things I was doing weren't that big of a deal. Meanwhile, if I was able to have this conversation with that person I was talking about at this time in 2019 that I'm talking about, I would have probably gotten signed, like sight unseen, because I had already established that. But I told myself I wasn't good enough. I told myself that this wasn't going to happen for me. I dumbed down my goals. I deprived myself of something I love doing because of that limiting belief, only to now, years later, arrive back to it and realize how much I missed having it in my life. Like lost time because I was second guessing myself and not believing in myself, even though the fucking evidence was right there in front of me. And that's what self-doubt and limiting beliefs will do to you. They will make you blind to seeing all that is in front of you, all the beautiful opportunity and talent and gifts that you have that are right there for you to showcase to the world. Your limiting beliefs will tell you that they're not good enough. And you will believe it, right? Because it's so deeply ingrained in us. Defies all fucking logic. We'll still believe it. And that's what I'm like, wake up call to myself right now. Wake up call to anybody listening to this. Like, stop fucking falling for the nonsense that your mind is feeding you, the trauma responses that it's feeding you. You're worthy of so much fucking more than you're giving yourself credit for. Like, don't lose precious time being so caught up in your own fucking head that you settle for less than what you want, that you stay in situations merely because they're comfortable, even if they're not what you want in this life. You have to push past all the fucking bullshit that your mind tells you and do what you know in your gut is what you really want and what you're meant to be doing in this world. And that's my closing message here for today's episode. So I hope that was helpful. I enjoyed sharing this. I enjoyed listening back to it. As narcissistic as that might sound, sometimes I need to relearn from myself things that he already knows. So that was today's episode. I'll catch y'all on Thursday for our Thursday Trends episode. So then, please take my fucking message to heart, and I'll catch you guys then. Be safe. Peace.